Hey guys, Jeffrey from Headstrong Training Systems here. So today we're going to be looking at the low bar squat, and in particular we're going to be examining how manipulation of our pelvis, so by tucking, untucking or leaving our pelvis in neutral, how that can affect our squat. So in a previous video we talked about the high bar squat, and we talked about, to just quickly summarize that video, we talked about how by tucking in our pelvis, that was the most optimal thing to do with our pelvis, because when we tuck it in through, it allows for greater knee travel, as a result better squat depth and more space for the hips to sink down, and as a result of that, a more upright torso, and that's what we want in a high bar squat. Now when we look at the low bar squat, the most important thing to note straight away is it's different to a high bar squat. With a low bar squat, because in a low bar squat you have the barbell seated lower down on your torso, so it's not in the high bar squat position where it's over your traps, it's actually lower down. It would be lower down on that body, and as a result the biomechanical demands of this squat will be vastly different to the high bar. So straight away, the couple key things to note with the low bar squat is that we don't want as much knee travel as a high bar squat, we don't want our torso to be as upright as a high bar squat, and we don't want to cut off our hips going back. Because with the low bar squat, we do want a bit of hip travel. Actually, there'll be a big demand on our hips going back to recruit our posterior chain, so our glutes and our hips, because those will be the more dominant and responsible muscle groups. The reason for that is because in a low bar squat compared to a high bar, the center of mass of that barbell is placed lower down, more towards the back, and as such there will be more hips going back in order for our barbell to stay over the center of our body, which is over that midfoot. Now to move on to the subject of the video, let's talk about our pelvis and how manipulation of our pelvis and what manipulation will be most effective for the low bar squat. Now first of all, let's look at tucking the pelvis. When we tuck our pelvis in during our initial position, we know we get greater knee travel, we get a more upright torso. The problem with that is, however, we don't want that in a low bar squat. When I tuck in my pelvis through and I try to perform a low bar squat, you'll see I'm able to stay a lot more upright. But the problem with that is all that emphasis and all that stress is shifted onto my quads and not my posterior chain, my hips, which is where we want the stress to be. Now let's look at the other direction. If we if we excessively untuck our hips, so we excessively untuck our hips, the problem with that is that straight away puts an arch into our lower back. And we know that if whatever starting position our torso is in, the more we do it, the worse it's going to become. And we don't want an excessive arch in our squat. So that's the problem with overarching and overextending our pelvis during a starting position. So now what's left is neutral. When we stay in neutral, I would argue that this is actually the most optimal and best pelvis position for you to be in. Because in this position, you're not forcing a lot of knee travel to stay upright, and you're going to get back problems with that excessive arch. When we stay neutral, it essentially sets your body into the best position. We load into our midfoot, and as we sink down, our knees and hips will travel accordingly. So we don't have that excessive knee travel forward like in the high bar squat, and we get more natural torso lean through that posterior chain of our hips going back. So to summarize what we've gone over today in today's video, with our low bar squat, we actually don't want to be excessively tucking our hips. Rather, I would argue the most optimal position for our hips and pelvis to be in is in neutral, because when we're staying in neutral, we get enough translation of our hips going backwards, because with the low bar squat, it is a hip dominant movement. We do want there to be our hips. We do want our hips to be going back. But our knees are still traveling forward, just not to the same extent or to the same degree as a high bar squat. So to summarize today's video, low bar squat, I'd advocate for the pelvis to be in neutral as you sink into the hole. So that's all from me today, guys. Hopefully that was helpful for you, and I'll catch you guys next time. Take care.